I told you that x equals 2 is one of the zeros. So in other words, I already know, if I'm graphing it and I'm not, but I already know that one of my intercepts is at 2. So think about that for a second. Think about that. You don't have to guess to get going. You know one of the zeros is 2. So what could we do to help us really quickly find the other 2? Divide. Absolutely. If we know 2 is a root, then I'm going to go ahead and do my division. I absolutely know that's going to be a 0, right? But this is going to be the part I'm interested in, because this is going to give me the other 2 zeros. Oh shoot, did I turn that on? Oh, God bless you. Would you agree with me? So let's just do the division. So we drop that 1 down. Don't forget, you got to drop that 1 down to get started. By the way, if you ever have a problem like this and you don't get 0, then either you made a mistake or I made a mistake, right? Because you have to get 0 here if that's supposed to be a root. All right, so what's left here? X squared minus 4x plus 3. What am I going to do with that? Factor that. I could, of course, use the quadratic formula, but it's easy to factor. So what's the answer to the question? What are the other 2 roots? 3 and 1. So the answer is x equals 3, x equals 1. Those are the other 2 roots. If we were going to graph it, we would go do all that, but we're not. This question just says find the other zeros. Zeros, roots. X-intercepts, all the same thing. Okay? Now, B is a little bit harder because why? Yeah. The root that you are given is complex. That is, it has an I in it. Imaginary roots always come in pairs. So in other words, when you're solving a polynomial, think about when you did the quadratic formula. Did you ever get an answer like x equals 1 plus I? No. You always got x equals 1 plus or minus I. Whenever you got an I, think about all the problems you've ever solved that had an I. You never got just 1. You always had that plus or minus. Imaginary roots always come in pairs. So they're telling me that 1 plus I is a root. That automatically means 1 minus I is a root. Imaginary roots always come with their conjugate. Okay? Always come in roots. Hector, what's on the iPad? There's nothing in this world as important as this right now, right? Now, these are 2 of the roots. How many roots does this problem have? 4. This guy's got 4 roots. And I got to figure out what the other 2 are. Now, what did we do in the last problem? We divided, right? Now that division was easy because it was just a number. You can actually do synthetic division with imaginary numbers, but it involves a lot of multiplication and a lot of simplification. Every step involves some work. So, another way of doing it that is still a lot of work, but I think personally less work, is think about what these are as factors. Now, here's what I mean. When I say x equals 1, that translates into the factor x minus 1. So what would be the factors that generated these? If these came from factors, what would those factors be? X minus 1 minus I. about it, if you set a factor equal to 0 and solve it, wouldn't that give me 1 plus I? Alright, so what's this factor? X minus 1 plus I? So there are the factors that would have generated these two roots. Alright, let's FOIL that. Let's multiply that together. Now, it's a big multiplication, but because these are conjugates, a lot of stuff's going to cancel out. So it's going to turn out not so bad. So when I multiply trinomials times trinomials, I take the first one times all three, then I take the second one times all three, then I take the third one times all three. You do it however you want. Just make sure you're multiplying all of these times all of these, right? Okay? You should have 9 things. Now, don't spend a ton of time, going back and double checking your work, because if you've done it right, everything with an I in it's going to disappear. So, for example, see how I have an IX and a negative IX? They're gone. I have a negative I and a positive I. That's gone. Now, what's a negative I squared? That would be plus 1, right? So if I can look at what's left after I got rid of all of my X, or all my I's, I have X squared minus 2X plus 2. This is not hard. I told you it was going to be time consuming, and it is. It's just what we have to do. Not hard though. Okay. So is everybody caught up with us now? We took the two, they gave me one complex root. I knew the conjugate came. I just have to know that. I wrote them as factors, FOILed it all out, and now I have this. So this gives me those two factors. Now, I'm going to take this guy, and using my wonderful long division, I'm going to divide my problem by x squared minus 2x plus 2. So I took the two roots that I knew, made factors out of them, multiplied them together, and now I'm going to divide by that thing. What should the remainder be when I'm all done with this division? It better be 0, that's right. So we're going to find out. Here we go. I need to take x squared into x to the 4th. So I'm going to need an x squared up here. Now I'm going to take that x squared times all three things. So I'm going to get x to the 4th minus 2x cubed plus 2x squared. So I take my x squared times all three things, and now I'll subtract. Remember, that's got to go. That first one has to be completely canceled out. It is. Amazingly, so is the second one. That doesn't always happen, it just did. This is going to become negative 3x squared. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring down my 6x and my minus 6. I'm going to go ahead and bring down both of those. So I've got three things down here. Now, what do I need up here? I got a minus 3. So minus 3x squared plus 6x minus 6. see what's going to happen when you subtract? Remember, you're subtracting. You see what's going to happen? You knew that was going to happen, but if it doesn't, somewhere you got a problem. So these were the two factors that I had from the beginning. The other two are going to come from this. Your job is to find the other zeros. So x squared minus 3 is 0, so it looks like your other two zeros are plus or minus root 3. So again, let's make sure we're answering the question completely. It said find the other zeros. So here are two of them, and then the other one we had to find right from the beginning was 1 minus I. Now this polynomial is an example of one where if you were completely on your own and you didn't have any hints to get started, and I said factor this thing, your PRRs wouldn't work because none of the roots ended up rational. Remember PRR, possible rational? So you would guess and guess and guess, and none of them would work. So you would know that the roots were all either irrational or imaginary, right? If we were doing that, you would have to use approximations, unless you had a calculator. You'd have to use approximations to do it. All right, and that's hard. We're not doing that. All right, let's try the next one. Same thing. Same thing. So you tell me, this one's going to be easier actually. You tell me what's the first thing you recognize when you are told that x equals 4i is a root. What's the first thing that pops into your head? X minus 4i. Well, okay, so x minus 4i is the factor. What's the other root that you know automatically? Negative 4i? Remember, they are conjugates. So this is like 0 plus 4i. So the conjugate would be 0 minus 4i, which means that factor would be x plus 4i. Everybody with me? Okay. So this is going to be an easier FOIL. So x squared. And on the short ones or the long ones, guys, all the i's should go away. That's kind of how you can check as you're going. All of your i's should go away. Do they? Well, these do. What's negative 16i squared? 16. So this is x squared plus 16. So what do we do now? Divide x squared plus 16. Wait a second. Need some more space here. Okay, we got all this, right? So I'm going to divide x squared plus 16 into x to the 4th plus I don't want this to be confusing. I don't need to put in the missing powers here because there's no x in this either. It's not going to hurt anything to go ahead and put the zeros in. Normally I would, but this is kind of a special problem, so I'm not. So I need x squared, that's going to give me x to the 4th plus 16x squared. Is that all right with everybody? Then let's subtract. Remember, that has to go away. That first term's got to cancel. Negative 3x squared minus 48. So am I getting minus 3 again? And sure enough, there's my 0. And so once again, my other roots are plus or minus root 3. They're not always that way, it just happened. Now, did you notice there's a little asterisk by this problem? I put that there because if you're really, focused on your math, you might notice that this problem actually factors. So I wouldn't necessarily, if I noticed that, I wouldn't have had to gone through all that work. This is in what we call quadratic form. It is exactly the same as x squared plus 13x minus 48. Except that instead of being x at x squared, it's x squared and x to the 4th. So this would factor as x squared plus 16 minus 3. And I could get my root straight from that. This would give me the plus or minus 4i, and this would give me the plus or minus root 3. So if you happen to notice that, you could have saved some time. So far, so good? All right. The next section, and we're getting close to getting done, folks. The next section is the opposite. We did some of these the other day, but these are a little bit more specific. We are being told that we have a 0 of 2, and we have a 0 of I, and the thing contains the point -1/8. So it's some polynomial function. You're going to come up with the equation that has these roots or zeros and also contains that point. So when you graph it, it contains that point. All right, so tell me what you're thinking. What is in your mind right now? So Grace yawned. All right. What else is in our mind right now? What? Making them factors. And not only that, so we have x minus 2 and x minus I, but what do we know about this one? Yeah, you also have to have negative I as a root, right? So you're going to need x plus I. Perfect. If you know the roots, you know the factors. All right, so now what do you think I'm going to do? It says right there, multiply out. So here we go. Let's start with these two because we know that's going to simplify. What's that simplify down to? X squared plus 1, very good. Everybody should get x squared plus 1. And then we'll just FOIL that times this other one. Does that look okay? You want to put it in descending order. So if you're in a little bit different order, that's fine. Just rearrange things. Put it in descending order. Now, let me put a y equals in front of that. Is that a polynomial function that has these 3 numbers as zeros? Yeah, it absolutely is. However, it also has to contain this point. So what do you think I'm going to do now? I'm going to plug in that point because I have no idea what coefficient might be out here in front. Remember, there's a coefficient out there in front that controls whether it starts up or down, how tall it goes up. Remember that from before? So I'm going to take that point and I'm going to plug it in. Now, I do want to say this. If you plug in, and you can plug in before you multiply out or after, it doesn't matter to me. I've already multiplied, so I'm plugging in after I multiply out. If you put your n in before you multiply out, then it goes out here in front. You've got your parentheses. If you do what I did and FOIL first, then the n is a coefficient on the whole mess. So make sure that you're treating it that way. It's not just on the x cubed. It's on the whole thing. All right, so here we go. 8 equals n times, all right, I'm putting in -1. So that's going to be -1. That's going to be -2. Be careful with your arithmetic. When you square the negative, it goes away. So that's -2. -1, -2. Now, simplify all that. So 8 equals n times -6. So n equals -8/6, or -4/3. Jacob, talk loud, I can't hear you.
Our potential is, will we be able to use our calculator, or do you have to do it all hand?
Your test, I'm in the middle of writing it right now, and it's going to be part no calculator and part calculator. So this problem, I don't think requires a calculator. There are some that will need a calculator for, but I think you should be able to do this kind of arithmetic without. I think you can do it. So now, how do I write my answer? Well, remember that -4/3 that you just found? Remember, it goes with everything, right? So when you write your answer, it's going to be y equals -4/3 x cubed, and then be careful, plus 8/3 x squared, minus 4/3 x, plus 8/3. When we did this before, we just stuck the -4/3 out in front because we weren't multiplying it all out. If we're multiplying it all out, then that means we have to distribute it. Anyone have a question about that? Well, guess what? There's another one. Let's do this next one here. See how far you can get on your own. I'll do it up here while the racket's going on. Did you start by recognizing that 1 minus 2i also? Okay, make sure you do that. So then what was the next thing you did? Did you make some factors? Now, these factors are going to be bigger. Do it carefully. What are you doing now? Hopefully, boiling right here. easy to, there's a lot of arithmetic. But again, you should have all your I terms canceling out. So that's kind of a little check for you. If they don't cancel out, then you know you've made some kind of mistake. I FOILed and got x squared minus 2x plus 5. I'm going to stop there and make sure everybody got that. Are you guys all foiling away? I know you are. I'm worried about these guys. Anybody else foil this and get this? Like that? Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put that other one in. Michael, is that what you ended up with? Are we done? No, because we still have to make sure that our curve contains that point, right? Which means that there's some multiplier out here that's going to determine that. So here we go. 4. Right, this time I'm putting a negative 1 again. So. I got negative 1/4 for my n. I'll stop and make sure somebody else did.
Yeah.
Ellen?
So how do you make the equation, like where's x minus 4
This right here?
Yeah.
Okay, remember, I just erased it, but remember, I was given that 0. I was given the 0, x equals 1, so that produced that factor. So there's 3 factors, I can only do 2 at a time, so I did the I ones first, but I still have to multiply by that one. So then I'm ready finally for my final answer. So I take that negative 1/4 and distribute it. So y equals negative 1/4 x cubed. This is going to be a negative 1/4 here. So it's going to be plus 3/4 x squared minus 7/4 x plus 5/4. All good? All right. I don't want you to put your notes away, but I want you to set them aside for a minute because I want to do something a little bit different here. So I need you to get out a full-size sheet of paper, please, a full-size sheet of notebook paper. Just a sheet of notebook paper. You guys are getting out a sheet of notebook paper. Leave your notes out. Don't put your notes away. equations on your paper. I want to spread out. Let's put our name on our paper right away. Can you just do that first? Put your name at the top of your paper. Alright, so we have 3 equations and spread them out. So like divide your paper up into thirds so you got plenty of workspace.
If I'm saying the lights are either on or off, like that, they're on or off, that's great.
You're just writing down these 3 equations. And I'll get out of the way here in a second.
I hope. Again, your lips, God's ears. I mean, like, it's football's fun. Yeah, man, football's fun. Like, it's a fun game. Ask Jake, he knows. Yeah.
Okay, so these are 3 equations written here. Here's what I want you to do with them. For the first one, I want you to sketch it. So I want you to set a little grid, points on the x-axis, make sure you plot them, and just do a little quick sketch. Okay? For the second one, I want you to list the PRRs. Alright? Remember, PRRs, possible rational roots, I want you to list them. And then for the third one, I want you to decide, and then explain your answer, is -3 a lower bound? And that's going to be yes or no, and you're going to say why or why not. Alright, let's take a few minutes on your own, use your notes. You have good notes, because all these things are in your notes. Guys, you can use your notes. Why is George not here? There he is. another couple minutes. Remember for number 2, all you're doing is listing the PRR. You're not finding any roots. I made up that problem. There probably aren't any. Rational roots, just listing the possibilities for number 2. Remember for number 3, you need an explanation. Okay, we're gonna go with our partners this way, so you two are together, you two are together, and then, you 3 will just have to work together. Go ahead, compare notes, make corrections. Don't let them talk you out of what you think is right. Boys, you can communicate with each other for a couple minutes if you want to.
So then I got, so x, 2x equals 1, and 2x equals 1, so you divide it here. That's what I thought, that was it. So you got 1.
The idea here is not that you're copying down your partner's answers, so this is a conversation.
Yeah, I got 1. So you have 4 points, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there are 4 x points, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, which is
Annie messed
even,
up.
but since there's a negative, it flips it. No, wait. So 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's a 0. You start on the ordinate as well. Positive.
So it should start right here, but it starts right here.
One more minute,
It should start up here, but right now.
See where you got your 1.5, that was a positive. So should it,
Oh, then it should be on the other side.
wait, no.
Right?
Hold on, I think you might be right, because you get a positive, so it has to be x minus 1/2. So then that means it has to go on that side, you know what I mean? Because
Oh, that's right.
when it's,
0
when
would
it's,
be
yeah,
x
I
minus
confused you,
1.
because when it's like, this is x equals 2, so.
So it starts right here.
30 seconds.
Is that what you got? Yep. And then for right here, I got,
Okay, yeah, so I have -7.
I have 1, 7, and then 1/5 and 7/5.
Yeah.
Do you have to put those on the bottom? Or can you just put them on?
Always, there's supposed to be some conversation there.
That's all Dr. Hammond asked her.
I asked her just because that's what we did.
This one has a question.
Well, here's 2.
It's not like a.
Like, cause
Is it okay to have it like that, or do you like, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, that's better.
That's
That's
fine.
actually
Okay.
better.
oh, it is?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I just didn't know if there was like.
that's the actual list.
Okay, 1, 7. And then for right here, I said it is because it switches from positive to negative.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys,
Because you know you saw that you couldn't.
start wrapping it up. Boys, I need you to shoot me a picture of what you got and send it in, please, right now.
It's positive, so it's 18, 19 because it's positive. Yeah, 19 times.
You guys need to bring your papers up, put on the stool. Please make sure your name's on your paper.
Alright, right on. Are we just checking with one person?
One person today, yep.
Okay.
Oh, no, we're good. We're chilling.
If we turn it, do you think it's 7?
Come on, guys, I need you to turn them in. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah, so we're fine. That's fine. Yeah, you're good.
Take taking good notes, paying attention in class is really important. The better your notes are, the easier this stuff is. Alright, we're gonna run through these real quick and then we've gotta get back to our notes and hopefully finish them up today. Everybody on camera here, you guys have all sent it in already. I'm looking at the time. I need them to be sent in because I'm going over them. I can't count them once I do that. I have Caden's and Declan's. George, I do not have yours.
Okay, good.
All right, here we go. Sketch this. Now, I threw a couple of tricky things in here, and hopefully you picked up on everything. First of all, did you put a dot at the origin?
Yep.
And a dot at -3,
Yep.
and a dot at 1/2. Oh, tricky Mrs. Ford, 1/2,
Yep.
and a dot at 2, right? Oh shoot, one of those was supposed to have a square on it, and I forgot to put it on there. Oh well. So, now, how many X's do I have? 4. That is an even number. Even numbered polynomials have this general setup. However, because of the negative, instead of starting up here, it's going to start down here. Since I forgot to put a square in here, all of those dots, all those x-intercepts are pass-through points. So the curve is just going to pass right through, connect, pass through, connect, pass through. So that's what your picture should look like. Any question about that? Now, list the PRRs. PRR, possible rational roots, are factors of the constant over factors of the leading coefficient. So the setup looks like this, right? Those are the factors of 7 and the factors of 5. Your list is 7 and 1, and 7/5 and 1/5. These are the actual numbers that you would guess if you had to guess the roots. Okay? And then here we want to know if -3 is a lower bound. So the way you determine that is by doing the division. You aren't checking to see if you get 0, although you might. We're going to put in -3. Did you catch there's a 0 in there? Oh, Mrs. Ford's just full of tricks today. There's a 0 in there. Why is there a 0 in there? Because there's no x cubed. So -6. Is this right? 2. What is it, 108, 192? Did I make any mistakes? Is that right? So what do I answer? Yes. -3 is a lower bound. That means if you are guessing, and there will be a lot of PRRs, 12 has lots of factors, don't guess any numbers less than -3, because none of them will work. Because what?
Because
The signs in that quotient row, the answer row there, alternate. Anybody have a question about that? All right, then let's get back to our notes. We only have 3 problems to go, we'll finish. All right. Make sure you have your review sheets with you on Monday. Okay, so f of x equals x cubed plus 4x minus 5. Please don't try to factor this. Don't try to do this. That's an x cubed. Yeah, so that's not going to work. So don't try it. It doesn't factor by grouping. So I'm gonna make some guesses, right? What are my PRRs? 1 and 5 and -1 and -5, right? That's it. That's it. So let's try 1. Where I have to make sure I do add a 0 in. So 1, 0, 4, -5. Oh, good deal. Your job is to find the zeros, so one of your answers is 1. Where are you going to get the other ones? This is a quadratic equation, x squared plus x plus 5. And if it factored, absolutely, feel free to factor. This one doesn't factor though, so we really don't have a choice. We'll use our quadratic formula, x squared, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So -1 plus or minus, is that -19? So I root 19. So you have these 2 answers, and that one are the zeros of your polynomial. All good? All right, we got one more, or 2 more to go. Let's see if we can get these guys done. All right, does this thing factor by grouping? No. So, anybody have a thought on what might be a good guess? What are our PRRs this time?
169.
Factors of 69. 1,
3 and 23.
23 and 69. Great. Plus or minus? I don't know. What do you want to try?
3.
3. No zeros in this one. There's a lot to think about as you're setting up your problems. Oh my gosh, does that work? I think it does. Is that wishful thinking? Sometimes I wish it so much that it actually make it work. No, I think that's right. So Caleb, now what? Exactly. And then what? Yeah, I'm not real optimistic with a 7 and a 23. I don't think that's going to factor. So I'll do my quadratic formula again. Something wrong with my brain today. I think I keep blanking out. Is that right? I think that's right. So 7 plus or minus, what's under there?
-43.
23 times 4 is 92. What did you get?
-43.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I root 43. So again, the question said, what are the roots? Find the zeros. So you should have 3 answers in your answer blank. You have these 2, and then you also have 3. That's one of your roots. So those are your 3 answers. Yep.
So when you're writing the answer, can you put plus or minus?
Oh, absolutely. And then put a 3 here, and that's what would go in the answer blank. Yep. Yep. All right, one more, guys. Here we go. This is a 4th degree, which means ultimately you better come up with 4 answers in your answer blank. But it's a little bit easier because there aren't very many PRRs. Factors of 6.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, and 6, plus or minus. Now, there's no rule that says you have to write those down, but I would definitely have them up here if I'm not writing them down, because that's my pool that I'm guessing from. I'm gonna start with 1, because I love to start with 1, and we're running short on time. Woo! So one of my answers is 1. Now, what is left over here? What is this? This is x to the 3rd. Now, that's like starting all over again now, because now we have an x to the 3rd, which is what we had in the last problem, right? So we gotta guess again. I'm gonna give you a little bit of something to think about here, though. Do you see how all those numbers are positive? I want you to think about doing a synthetic division with this set of numbers now. Let me just try 1 again. 1 could work again, but it won't. Because what's gonna happen if I put a positive number out there? There is no way it's ever gonna cancel out, right? So at this point, I am not going to guess any more positive numbers. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you kind of see that? So I could try -1.
That works.
Oh, and lo and behold, it works. So 1 and -1 are answers. And since I have now done 2 divisions, what is this that's left over? X squared plus x plus 6. Which, let's finish it, which we can solve using the quadratic formula. So -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. -1 plus or minus I root 23. Is that right?
24, I think.
20. Well, this is 1 minus 24.
Yeah. That's right.
So that to be -23, so it's I root 23. How many answers are up there in the answer blank? 4. Which is what we need. Okay? All right, so 2.5 is due Tuesday. And on Monday, we're going to start reviewing. So we can figure out when our test is. We're going to review Monday, and then we're going to review our next class after that. I don't know, is that Tuesday? I have no idea. And then our test will be the next one after that. So Monday is review, the next day is review, and the test is the next day.
Probably Thursday, I think.
Friday, Thursday then, okay. All right, did everybody hear that? The plan? Okay, all right. Yep. So 2.5 will be due on Tuesday, did you hear me say that? Okay. Or, yeah.
Come on, man. Come on.
Okay, so let's spray the desks.